Okay, so these are our nth powers. Okay. Some of these we are going to expect you to memorize, and I'm going to quiz you on them at the beginning of next week. Okay. Now, the quiz is not going to be what is 7 cubed, but the quiz is going to be what is the cube root of, let's say, 343. Okay, so this is how we end up using these powers tables, because we're talking about nth roots and nth powers this unit, which means we're going to be doing not just the cube root, but the fourth root and the fifth root and the sixth root. So when I'm asked for the fifth root of 3,125, right, fifth root, I'm going to go to the fifth power column, find 3125, and then the answer is 5. So the fifth root, I'm going to write that down. We say the fifth root of 3125 equals 5. Yes, write that down. Those are our examples. Okay, so if you're just watching this video, you're going to copy this table into your notes, and you need to memorize the ones that are highlighted in yellow. Okay, the ones that are highlighted in yellow are fair game for your quiz. It'll be 10 questions, right? So if I ask you, what's the sixth root of 729? Say that louder. I heard someone say it. 3, right? Sixth root, so I'm looking at end of the sixth column of 729, and that answer is 3. Now I have flashcards and a Quizlet, and that's linked in the module, okay? So I'll link the Quizlet in the module for you, and you can do the flashcards just like you would practice your multiplication tables, okay? This is going to help us in this chapter, and it's going to be super important for next chapter, right? So we're setting ourselves up by memorizing these to not be dependent on a calculator, because you know how we like to not let you use those, and to really be able to do some of the math quickly, okay? So it's both this unit and next unit where this becomes important. So if I asked you, what is the fourth root of 2401, what would you answer? 7. Okay, so this table you're going to keep in your notes and you're going to use in reference, and we'll keep the poster up on the board as well for us. So we have that to reference, not during the quiz, obviously, but so when you're working on homework, you can quickly reference that.
We have to know the 7 and 8. Or not,
Yeah, you can write that. I would write this 2 to the 7th and 2 to the 8th, you should know. 2 to the 7th is 128, 2 to the 8th is 256. We should know those. Okay, we are looking at nth roots, radical expressions, and rational exponents. So we'll start looking at nth roots. If b to the n power is equal to a, then the nth root of a is equal to b. Okay, so the nth root is asking what power or what number to the nth power is a. So the first part of the homework, it says find the indicated real nth root of a. So it's asking for real roots, meaning we're not going to work with the number I at all. We're not using imaginary numbers, only real. So if I have a negative, an odd root of a negative, the answer is negative. But I can't do an odd root of or an even root of a negative because we're not using imaginary numbers. We're just working in the realm of real numbers this chapter. Okay, so if it's asking me find the nth root, the fifth root of negative 243, we can reference our table. What number to the fifth power is equal to negative 243? Negative 3. So if it's a negative under an odd root, the answer is just negative. Okay, so number 2 asks, what's the 8th root of 256? 2. Okay. That one's not on the handwritten tables, but it was on the other ones. And what's the fourth root of 16? Also 2. Okay. So take a second and do these problems 1, 2, and 3 off to the side here. The fifth root of 32, the cube root of negative 27, and the fourth root of 250. All right, what did we get? What is the fifth root of 32? 2. What is the cube root of negative 27? Negative 3. And what's the fourth root of 256? 4. Okay. I don't expect you to have all these memorized today. Use your table with the homework tonight. Okay. We can also write nth roots as powers. So the square root, we don't write the 2, right? The square root is like the default, the one we write without the number, right? Just like the exponent of 1 is the default. We don't write 1 as the exponent. So this is a 2. So the square root is the 1/2 power. The cube root is the 1/3 power. So make sure you write these down into your notes. The fourth root is a to the 1/4 power. So that means the nth root, the root becomes the denominator of the fractional exponent. So the nth root of a is equal to a to the 1 over the n power. And there's 2 ways to write the fractional exponent that has a numerator. If I have the nth root of a to the m under the radical, or the nth root of a all to the m power, those are both equal to a to the m over n. And the one in the middle here is the one we like to use the most. It's the most useful for us when we're trying to convert a fractional exponent to a radical so that we can evaluate. And that's what we're going to be doing next. We're going to go from the fractional exponent to the radical.
Those fractions are exponents, right?
Yes, the fractions are exponents. Okay, so we're going to evaluate 16 to the 3/2 power. We're going to do that by rewriting it as a radical and then finding what the answer is. So remember that the exponent can be, or the numerator is the exponent. So I could write this as the square root of 16 cubed. But that doesn't help me much because I can't do 16 cubed in my head, right? What if I wrote it as the square root of 16 with the cube on the outside of the parentheses? Does that give me something I can do in my head? Yes? Do I know what the square root of 16 is? Yes. The square root of 16 is 4. And then I can cube that. Okay? So 4 cubed is 64. Now remember that we don't usually write the 2 in when we're writing the square root. Okay, every other denominator we're going to write that in the square root part, but for the square we generally leave it off. But if it helps to remind you to write it in there, write it in. Okay. We have 27 to the negative 2/3 power. Does the negative exponent make it negative? No, the negative exponent makes it a fraction, right? So this becomes 1 over, let me zoom in so I can write it bigger. The square, hold on. 1 over 27 to the 2/3. 3 is our denominator, so 3 is the root, the cube root of 27 squared. If we did it the other way around and wrote the 27 squared in the radical, we can't do that in our head. But we know the cube root of 27 is what? 3. So that becomes 1 over 3 squared. And we get 1/9. Well, that's the cube root of 27, which is asking you what number cubed is 27. And that's 3. And 625 to the 1/4 power. That's the 4th root of 625. Do I need to write to the 1st power? Do we ever write to the 1st power on something? No. And let's use our table. What's the 4th root of 625? 5. Okay. I want you to try number 4. Okay, so how do I rewrite it as a radical? 81 to the 3/4. What's the root? 4. The 4th root of 81, and the exponent is the 3, the numerator. What's the 4th root of 81? 3. So that's 3 cubed, which is 27. Now try number 5. So the root is the 3. So the 3rd root of negative 125, all to the 4th power. The numerator becomes the exponent. That's negative 5 to the 4th. The parentheses are important because it makes it a positive 625. Without the parentheses, the answer would be negative. Okay? All right. Next thing we're going to do is go the other way around. Can we rewrite the radical as a fractional exponent? The cube root of t to the 4th power. So again, remember, the root is the denominator, the exponent is the numerator. So this is going to be t to what power? The exponent becomes the numerator, so 4. The root is the denominator, thirds. Yeah, it is. For now. And for today. The 5th root of m to the negative 2 power. So that's going to be m. What's the numerator going to be? Negative 2. And the denominator will be the 5. Now you could rewrite that as 1 over m to the 2/5. Okay, because we shouldn't write anything with negative exponents. Try number 3. So we get f to the 2/4 power. It doesn't matter whether the exponent is under the radical or outside the parentheses, it's always the numerator. Okay? And that 2/4 can be reduced to 1/2. And the square root of b to the 7th. Right. b to the 7 over 2. We have to remember when we see the square root that the denominator is 2. It's not 1. There is no 1th root. So your denominator of these should never be 1. There wouldn't be a radical in that case. And then the 6th root of x cubed, all to the negative 2 power. So I can do what's inside, x to the 3/6 to the negative 2. I can reduce then multiply, or I can multiply then reduce. X to the 1/2 to the negative 2, which is x to the negative 1, which would be 1 over x. So we're going to look at how to evaluate with a calculator. I'm going to show you the TI calculator and the graph or the scientific calculator on your phone. Okay, so if you need your phone, go grab it. Yeah. You should have a calculator that's not attached to your phone for use on tests and quizzes. I'm not going to let you use your phone on a quiz, so you're going to need to have a real calculator. You do not need to spend the money for the graphing calculators. These aren't necessary. Your calculators should be about $12.99, unless inflation got the calculator prices too. So, all right, so we have this calculator here. We want to do 7 to the 1/4 power. So we're going to turn it on. If you don't know already, this is your exponent button, the little caret. It looks like an up arrow, but we call it a caret. So to do 7 to the 1/4 power, I just hit 7. I tell it I want an exponent, and I put the fraction in parentheses, 1 divided by 4. And I get 1.627. Make sure you round at the third decimal place. Okay. Now, in the cell phone calculator, it's pretty much the same thing, but you have to know what key to use. In the cell phone, it's this button here, X to the Y, okay? So you're going to hit 7, X to the Y key, and then you're going to use the parentheses, 1 divided by 4. You can close the parentheses, that tells you that that equals 0.25, and then hit enter. That gave us the same answer, right? Okay. So go ahead and do 10 to the 2/5 in your calculator. See if you can get the right answer. Yes. Okay, did we get that? Okay, we should be getting 2.51. Technically, that's going to round to a 2, right? Because the 8 rounds the 1 up. Now, the other way, the radical. What if I want to do the cube root of 11 squared? In this calculator, pay attention because this calculator is different from the cell phone one. So in the calculators, you're going to type in the 3 for the root. Then above the exponent button, it says X root. Can you see it? Barely. You can see the X in the root, right? So we're going to hit second, our caret button. And notice in here it says X root. Well, that's telling it this X is a 3. And then tell it what you want to put underneath it, 11 squared. Hit enter. There's this button here above the caret. You're going to hit second and then your exponent key, that's X root. No matter what your calculator is, if you want the opposite or the inverse of doing an exponent, it's going to be second, your exponent button. Yeah, the 3 would be in front, so you put the 3 first. Yours might be a little more sophisticated.
I think it's the same thing, just different.
Just looks different? In the cell phone, we have to put it in backwards. It's X root, it's Y root X. So you plug in 121, hit your X root Y, and then you tell it to do the third root of that number. And we get the same answer.